You ever have one of those days where you're just trying to honor your family, and the next thing you know, you're staring down a lawsuit from a woman who thinks HOA regulations are the word of God? That's exactly how this all started for me. You'll have to tear down your house immediately or face a lawsuit. Those were the first words out of Victoria Blackwood's mouth, the president of the Millbrook Heights HOA, a woman so convinced of her own power, she once tried to block Amazon deliveries for not being aesthetically pleasing. Yeah, that happened. Now, I know what you're thinking. Who in their right mind would pick a fight with the HOA president? But let me back up a sec. 3 months before that showdown, I'd just inherited my grandpa Ezra Hartwell's land in one of Denver's fanciest suburbs. Grandpa was a master carpenter, the kind of man who could build a rocking chair out of 2 planks and a box of nails, and he left me this quarter-acre plot he'd owned since the late 80s. I grew up watching him measure twice, cut once, and never compromise on quality, so when I stood on that land for the first time as its owner, the only thing on my mind was building a home worthy of his legacy. Turns out legacy's a lot heavier than a toolbox. I hadn't even finished unloading my surveying gear before Victoria rolled up in a silver Mercedes all-business cream blazer, pearls the works. She gave me the kind of once-over that makes you feel like you've got a parking ticket taped to your forehead and said, "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing here?" Apparently in her world, inheriting land doesn't mean you get to use it. She wasted no time introducing herself as the HOA president and dropping a stack of maps and bylaws across her car hood announcing my lot had complications. According to Victoria, my grandfather's place was wrongly surveyed decades ago, so any house I built would violate a laundry list of HOA rules, setbacks, architecture, color palettes, probably even the direction the wind could blow. She talked with the confidence of someone who's never been wrong in their life, or at least never admitted it. I tried not to let it get to me. Grandpa Ezra never trusted people who used paperwork as a weapon, and I couldn't shake the feeling Victoria was up to something. That night I went through every document Grandpa left behind, old tax returns, faded receipts, but also a hidden safe in the back of the workshop. Inside were the original blueprints from 1987, real heavy paper, special watermark you only see under certain light, the sort of thing the city used to fight forgeries back in the day. I felt this jolt of hope. If these documents were real, then Victoria's claims didn't just smell fishy, they reeked. But why was she so dead set on keeping me off my own land? Was it just HOA busybody syndrome or something more? I didn't have long to wonder. 3 days later, a courier dumped a fat legal envelope on my porch cease and desist official letterhead the works. Her lawyer, Cornelius Pike, basically threatened to bury me in legal fees if I didn't stop building. There was even a handwritten note. "Some battles aren't worth fighting, son. Friendly advice. Friendly right." But if Victoria thought paperwork was going to scare me, she'd picked the wrong guy. I spent the next week pulling every permit, filing every inspection, making sure not a single nail went in crooked. When the city inspector finally came out, he said mine was the best foundation he'd seen in 15 years. 1 point for the good guys. Only thing was, the neighborhood was splitting in two. Some folks would whisper their support stories about Victoria bullying them into changing their siding or paying double for lawn services approved by the HOA. Others avoided me like I had the plague. But then out of nowhere, Eleanor Winters, the oldest resident on the block, invited me over for coffee. She'd lived there since before most of the houses even existed, and over a table piled high with black and white photos, told me the truth about my grandpa. Turns out, Ezra Hartwell was one of the people who fought for fair HOA rules in the first place, trying to keep things balanced so no one person, especially not Victoria, could seize control. Eleanor showed me minutes from old HOA meetings and whispered, "Your grandpa saw all this coming." Victoria wasn't always a tyrant, but after her nasty divorce, something in her snapped. That's when Eleanor dropped a bombshell. Victoria hadn't even been properly elected. She'd just taken over after the last president died, making up new rules, boosting fees, and skipping elections for years. The community was scared to push back. As I was heading out, Eleanor gave me a stack of her own evidence documents, weird payments, contracts that didn't add up. Suddenly, I realized this wasn't just about my house. It was about a whole neighborhood living under the thumb of someone who didn't care about democracy, only power. But the real twist hit the next morning when Eleanor called again. Voice shaking Mason Victoria Blackwood isn't even her real name. With a little digging, we discovered she'd been Victoria Peaton in California, a disbarred real estate attorney run out of the state for falsifying property records and costing investors millions. Her ex-husband had died under suspicious circumstances and not long after Victoria disappeared, only to resurface here. At this point, I called a community-wide HOA meeting, pulling a clause from the bylaws Victoria conveniently ignored. She tried to shut it down, but with enough neighbors behind me, she had no choice. The night of the meeting, you could feel the tension people packed in, some angry, some just tired of being afraid. I laid out everything: the forged elections, the misused funds, Victoria's real identity. The look on her face, priceless. She tried to threaten me, but nobody was listening. Instead, the community voted to launch a full audit and schedule new elections. Victoria's grip was slipping. That's when the gloves came off. A few days later, my construction site flooded 3 feet of water. City pipes accidentally burst neighbors' homes, damaged. It was pure sabotage, and everyone knew who was behind it. But Victoria overplayed her hand. Eleanor, whose basement was flooded, was now out for blood. She dug deeper into the HOA's finances and uncovered a money laundering scheme, fake companies, inflated invoices, hundreds of thousands of dollars siphoned off by Victoria over the years. It was time for the big guns. We took our evidence to the FBI. Agent Lisa Park, sharp as a tack, told us this wasn't Victoria's first rodeo. She'd been running similar scams across multiple states. But the proof we had, those blueprints with anti-counterfeiting watermarks, Eleanor's financials, made this case bulletproof. When the feds raided Victoria's house offices and accounts, the neighborhood practically threw a block party. She was hauled into court on charges ranging from wire fraud to identity theft to money laundering. In the courtroom, all her confidence melted away. My friend Sarah Chen, our lawyer, laid out the authenticated blueprints and property records, exposing that Victoria had been living on land that never belonged to her, collecting HOA fees as if she owned the place. Her lawyer tried every trick in the book, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury was out less than 3 hours, guilty on every count. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in federal prison, ordered restitution, and banned her from ever holding HOA authority again. They even seized her assets to repay the community. 6 months later, I stood in my brand new kitchen looking out at the old community garden that replaced Victoria's illegal fence. Eleanor had become the new HOA president. The neighbors were working together for the first time in years, and kids played in a new park paid for by the money Victoria had stolen and we'd gotten back. Here's the kicker. Renovating my basement, I found a hidden compartment with a letter from Grandpa Ezra. He knew Victoria would come after us, and he left step-by-step instructions for how to use those blueprints to take her down. It wasn't just about building a house, it was about defending what's right, about standing up when someone tries to bully you with money paperwork or intimidation. If you've ever faced down someone like Victoria, boss, neighbor, landlord, you know how tough it is. But I'm telling you, if you dig deep, trust your gut, and refuse to be scared off, even the most powerful bully can be brought down. Now that's my story. But let's be real, communities everywhere face their own Victorias. What do you think? Should HOA presidents have that much power? Ever fought back and won or lost against someone like her? Drop your thoughts below, because sometimes the real battle is just beginning. And your voice might just be what inspires the next person to stand up and say, "Not on my land."